change, the economy, Indigenous issues, affordable housing, LGBT plus rights, and more. We've also went into high schools to spread our message to future voters. We talked about the role of democracy, how elections work, and what they can do to hold their politicians accountable. The response so far has been incredible, and the opportunities I've received are even better. I've been able to talk to these 5 candidates one-on-one and hear about what they want to do for young voters if they're elected. Tonight, we're giving you that same opportunity. We will give each candidate 3 minutes to make an opening statement, then we'll give the audience a chance to ask questions. Audience members will be given a minute to ask their question, then the candidate or candidates who the question is directed at will be given 90 seconds to answer. Then we'll open up a discussion among candidates. Once the discussion is over, then we'll move on to our next question. Here's Andy Clark with a few words about tonight.
Thanks, Brittany. So if Brittany's going to be the good cop, I'm going to be the bad cop this evening. I am the timekeeper, as she said, 3 minutes off the top. We're hoping that there are lots of questions from the audience. One of the things that we did during the Pizza and Politics luncheon is collect questions from students. So we've got a number of them in here as well. But we're hoping that you, the audience, will ask questions this evening. There's mics in both aisles, so feel free. We would like you to keep the question to a minute long in length. We want questions and not necessarily comments or rants. And then it can be directed at one of them, 2 of them, or all of them, depending on what your question is and who it's for. We're going to give, depending on the number of people asked, 60 to 90 seconds to answer that question. And then we're not going to hard time this, but we want to have 5 to 7 minutes of debate and discussion. We're hoping to examine, go a little more in depth on some of the issues that are raised here tonight than they had an opportunity to last night in the Nationals Leaders debate, which was not a sterling success in terms of generating light and not heat about the issues that each of the parties' platforms. We're hoping for a little more light here this evening than heat, although that doesn't mean that we're not going to hear some disagreement amongst these 5. So each question will go for 5 to 7, discussion for 5 to 7 minutes. I'll signal the end of it, and then we'll move on to the next question. I should say as well that you'll know if you're listening that this is being broadcast on 91X, 91.3 FM. It's also being live streamed on the website that we have created for this project, so you think I should vote.ca. So if you're listening and you want to see us all, you can go to that website as well. And I think that's it, business-wise. So, guys, I'll be down here and I'll give you a 10-second and a 5-second wrap. Okay.
All right. So tonight we have Conservative candidate Tim Durkin, People's Party candidate Paul Bordenero, Liberal candidate and MP Neil Ellis, Green Party candidate Danny Solosky, and NDP candidate Stephanie Bell. So now we'll move on to our opening statements, and we'll start with Tim Durkin.
I wanted to say thank you guys very much for having me, for Brittany, for the invitation. She had me at Pizza and Politics when she said there was going to be pizza involved, and so we had an opportunity to go into the Link Lounge, talk to students, and find out by listening, as opposed to talking, about some of the major issues. My name is Tim Durkin, and I live about 3 minutes away here from Loyalist College, and I went to Loyalist College and took the programs that a lot of these students are in this evening. At the time, it was called radio broadcasting and broadcast journalism. I see some of the former professors here tonight that educated me, and so I think doing something like this is a huge project. So thank you, a former dean as well that's here tonight as well. One of the great things about the Loyalist programs is the way they've integrated into the community, so I thank them for that. Last night, during the leaders' debate, we saw some of the difficulties with politics and talking over each other and the disagreement that comes with it. And I have to, as we've all done, really pay tribute to the other people that are running in this election here in the Bay of Quinte riding. It's not an easy thing to do. There's a lot of heartache, there's a lot of lost nights of sleep, there's a lot of stress involved, and it's hard on family as well. And so the people here have to be commended. But just because we personally get along doesn't mean that the policy we all agree on. And that's one of the things that brings out the democratic process. And the fact that young people are getting involved in this is absolutely vital. You know, I was at a door of somebody today, and one of the things that they said to me is that this month I have to choose whether I cut my pills in half or I miss my heating bill. And when the individual said that to me, it really hit home, because it speaks to a far larger problem that we have in this country, and that's affordability. And it's the main issue that the Conservative Party is focusing on with this election. We're going to be talking about it more tonight, and I hope to talk to you and get an opportunity with that as well. One of the concerns that we have is so many promises are always made coming into an election, that they're going to sell the farm and give you everything you want. But then what follows that is broken promises. Going to do massive infrastructure projects. We're going to support our military and our veterans and our farmers and our small businesses and our large businesses, and we're going to make everything perfect. But broken promises equals cynicism in politics. And that's why we have the concern in politics we do today. I look forward to talking more about it, and I thank you for the opportunity to talk, and we'll have a chance to interact through the evening. Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Paul.
Madam Chair, fellow candidates, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Paul Bordenaro. I am the Bay of Quinte candidate for the People's Party of Canada. I am 66 years old and reside in Caring Place. I am single with 2 sons and 10 grandchildren. I'm very proud, excited, and honored to be part of the fastest growing federal political party in the history of Canada, a country that has only been governed by 2 political parties in our 152 years. I feel that the last several governments in power have lost touch with ordinary, everyday Canadians. Our party leader, the Honourable Maxime Bernier, believes now is the time to do politics differently. The People's Party of Canada is built on a foundation of 4 core values. These form the basis for the PPC's policies, which will enable all Canadians an equal opportunity to succeed. The core values are personal responsibility, individual freedom, respect, and fairness. The PPC believes that government's role is to establish an economic environment of low taxes, efficient services, and responsible regulation, thus allowing the free market to build our economy. We believe that by treating all Canadians as truly equal, we can eliminate the cause of divisiveness that harms our national unity. The Conservatives and Liberals are globalists. We are nationalists. Our plan looks after all Canadians first, not the rest of the world. With a population of only 37 million, we only represent half of 1% of the world's population. Yet somehow our 2 main parties feel they can be the welfare state of the world. Our plan would eliminate unnecessary foreign aid and focus on emergency and humanitarian aid only. Our party wants to put immigration in line with our needs. The present immigration policies are costing taxpayers billions of dollars a year and lowering our standard of living and quality of life. We want immigration reform to improve our country, not destroy it. We want to strongly defend our traditions and values. The current federal parties continue to grow government taxes and regulations. We have a fair plan that will benefit all Canadians. We will completely abolish corporate welfare. We will reform income tax. All Canadians will have lower taxes. We will cancel the capital gains tax. Trudeau wants to expand this tax by imposing a capital gains tax on your principal residence. We will cancel the carbon tax. The Liberals and Conservatives are both on track not only to keep this tax or a form of it, but continue to increase it. The PPC cares about the environment, but do not feel that a carbon tax is as effective as good policy. Climate change is real, and we will address it with real solutions. The other parties talk about making life more affordable, yet fail to expose the actual damage that the carbon tax will have on all Canadians. Added tax on fuel prices will not only make it more expensive to go to work or trips for medical appointments, it will also add to the cost of everything you buy from added shipping. The biggest impact will be the added cost of your grocery bill. Thank you very much.
Now we will hear from Neil.
Hi, I'm Neil Ellis, your local Liberal candidate. I'm married to my wife, Sue, a Loyalist graduate of 32 years. I have 3 children, Zachary, Madison, and Abby, who attends Loyalist and is doing her second half of her program in nursing at Brock University. I graduated from Carleton and McMaster University. I own 3 small businesses. My first role as political role was president of student council, and I tell you that was a task to keep students happy. My second role was 2-term mayor of City of Belleville, and third and finally, the first member of the Bay of Quinte MP. I'd like to thank everybody for 4 years of service, and I'd like to touch on some of the things that we did. One of the main things that really is in my heart was we've lifted over 825,000 people out of poverty, including 200,000 seniors, 300,000 children. And we did this with children with a Canadian Child Benefit, which is a tax-free amount, and each month there's $6.5 million comes into the riding to help parents raise their family. Just incredible, 300,000 children out of poverty. Now I'd like to touch on some of the things in our platform for students. In this platform, we're going to increase federal grants up to $1,200 grants. Another thing is 2 years interest-free grace period for your student loans, or till you start making $35,000 a year. In this platform also, if you get out of, and I know student loans take a while to pay off, some up to 5, 10, 15 years. Once you start a family, there's going to be a grace period on your student loan that there'll be no interest, and a grace period for 5 years, so you can get your family raised or up to 5 years of age. 25% reduction in cell phone bills. I see everybody has their cell phone with them tonight. Hopefully they're turned off. My daughter wanted to know if we had free data, but that's not coming. We'd also like to target 95% of Canadians' homes and businesses with high-speed internet by 2025. We have a first-time home buyers. I know a lot of you will be buying your houses hopefully sooner than later. There's up to a 10% mortgage-free that you don't pay till you sell your house. And this will lower your mortgage payment by about $225 a month. With the time I have left here, I just want to touch on what Tim said about promises. And there's an independent study that's been done. Our government right now in the last 4 years has committed or working on 93% of our provinces, or our promises. And it's the best government fulfilling promises in the last 30 years. I'd like to talk a little bit about the environment. 2 years or 4 years ago when we ran, the most important things was jobs and the economy. Right now we've created over 1 million jobs. This election, the 2 main things are climate change and healthcare. On our climate change, we're going to meet our Paris targets. We're phasing out coal. We're banning single-use plastics and microbeads. There's carbon pricing, which is anyone who filled out their taxes are going to, 8 out of 10 people get a rebate back. We're planting 2 million trees, and we're going net zero by 2050. Thank you.
Now we'll hear from Danny.
Yeah, hi there. Thank you, Brittany, and thank you. I applaud you for this Get Out the Vote initiative that you and the school have put on in engaging young people throughout our community. We have to act. Action requires cooperation, respect, and focus. That is all we need to get this done. I feel it in my core. How many watched the leaders' debate last night? I was looking for cooperation, respect, and focus. They failed to give us that. Canada lost. We are leaderless. Party colors do not matter. Red, blue, green, orange, purple. Last night they had their chances to inspire us, and they failed. I felt the absence for the one thing we need, hope. So how do we move forward? We need to build cooperation. We need a kaleidoscope of colors. We have to move on the climate crisis, affordable housing, and for including every one of our neighbors in economic, social, and ecological justice. We do it here. The local candidates here do cooperate, respect, and focus. You are here, and we have leaders from all sectors around us. We have people power right here. You inspire me and give me hope. Thank you all. Good things are lining up from the grassroots across the globe. Greta Thunberg is lining up people everywhere. Elizabeth Warren will be president next year, and the U.S. will engage. We are not alone. People power is rising up everywhere. So let's get our act together right here. Act locally, lead nationally, and inspire globally. Get together and start tackling the issues with solutions. Involve our local leaders. Involve all of us, young, old. every diverse segment among all our neighbors, across all 3 levels of government, cut through the bureaucratic crap and act. Right here in the Bay of Quinte, how many electric vehicles do we need? How many solar panels? How many do we need to train to retrofit our buildings? Let's ensure everyone can access these with the financing assistance so nobody is left behind. Let's build affordable homes. How do we get this all produced? One of us is going to lose this election and have to go to Ottawa. That unlucky person is going to have to act as our liaison in the darkness there to get the factories, education, and infrastructure we will need. Their voice is going to need our voices to back him or her up. Our leaders have abandoned us, so let's abandon them. Let's change the rules of the game. To hell with Ottawa. Let's do it here. Let's take our democracy back. Let's inspire ourselves, let's restore our hope, and let's win this with a kaleidoscope of color. Thank you.
Before we get to Stephanie, I'd just like to ask anyone who has a question to come to one of these 2 microphones, because after they do their opening statements, we will be getting questions from the audience. All right, Stephanie?
Thanks, Brittany. And Danny, I just want to say, I love you so much, man. You're the best, honestly. You really are. You're such a passionate guy. I dig it. I really do.
Our kids need a future.
Yeah. So I'm Stephanie Bell. I'm your NDP candidate for this riding of the Bay of Quinte. And I've lived here in this riding for the last 25 years. I love this place. I can't seem to stay away. I've tried to go other places, and I just keep coming back because I love the people and I love the land. It's my home for sure. Right now I'm also working. I'm a working person. I work as a server. I work actually 3 different jobs. As a young person, it's kind of the situation in Prince Edward County where I live. You basically, in order to live, you have to kind of try to make it work. So I work as a bartender server at the 555. I'm a hostess late night at Hartley's, and I'm also an aspiring bike mechanic. It's really great to get dirty. Actually, that's where I came from. I'm wearing a jersey right now. I rode here from the Bloomfield Bike Shop this afternoon because I thought it would be good to kind of keep my carbon footprint a little bit further down. So I don't normally wear a jersey to the debate, but I thought it would be a little bit of a extra something. I also ran for municipal council twice in Prince Edward County. I believe that municipal governance is one of the most accessible ways that we can access government. And I believe that people should have access, and it should be easy for people to take part in government and feel like they're included. And so I wanted to make sure I ran at that level. I'm also running because I believe that we should have diversity in candidacy. I'm just so shocked to think that I'm a diverse person at this moment. I'm just a young woman, but we should have that for sure. So I wanted to make sure we have that, and that's why I continue to show up. Yeah, what more can I say about that? My 4 priorities for this election are, and this doesn't mean that they're the only things that I think that matter, but if we could get these 4 things dealt with, I think our community would be well served. So number 1 is climate action. Number 2 is affordable housing. Number 3 is pharmacare. And number 4 is electoral reform. Climate action, because we have to act now. We do not have a lot of time left. Affordable housing, because we have a serious crisis on our hand here. We do not have enough housing for people, and people are struggling under the burden of affordability. Pharmacare, because you should have access to your medication. Preventative medicine is good medicine. It's more affordable in the long run. It's cheaper than paying for it on the back end. So if anyone has an issue around that. And then electoral reform, because you deserve to have your voice and your vote count. And we deserve that system. It's 2019, it's a modern era, we deserve that system. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you again, Brittany.
So now we're going to take questions from some of our QNet News reporters. We're going to start with Thomas Goyer.
Thank you, Brittany. The first question is for all the candidates. Climate change is a big issue with people my age. It's a big issue in the area. What my question is about hard answers to the question. In the spring, we had a debate on transit form here, basically what we could do to improve transit in the area. We discussed a lot of the problems and a lot of the solutions. I want to do a similar thing here with this question. Excuse me, sorry. So, how do you candidates think we can improve climate change in this area specifically? Anything we can do locally, not only as citizens, but as a community? Thank you.
All right, we'll start with Tim.
It's Thomas, right? Thank you for the question, Thomas. One of the things that we have a challenge with, and it's particularly prevalent with the fact that Canada is a very difficult country to commute in. This area, if someone lives in Cressy or Germans Landing or Consacon, if they're coming to CFB Trenton, coming to Loyalist, coming to the industrial park in Belleville, going to Sandbanks, there's a lot of travel involved. And one of the things is we're seeing that transition with vehicles. A number of years ago, they had gas guzzlers. Everything was a vehicle that just ate gas. And we're seeing the ability with vehicles to get better and better and more efficient fuel mileage. We also saw with the city of Belleville, we have a transit program that's got a green vehicle as well. It always is going to be a major problem in Canada, the two things that really eat up a lot of the carbon emissions, and that's going to be travel, and it's going to be heating your homes. And those two things cause the most pollution. So what we're doing as a party is we're going to offer green energy tax credits as far as making your house energy efficient. Because anytime you go into a house, you get a chance to see what the house is made up of, and they'll show you where a house is just not energy efficient, usually around windows or doors. So we're going to offer that. We also have a transit credit that we're going to be offering as well to have people choose public transit as opposed to vehicles. Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Paul.
We do not take an alarmist approach to climate change. We believe climate change is real. Carbon tax really is not helping the situation at all. It's just this weird redistribution of money. I don't understand it. If somebody understands it, I don't get it. And even if we look at our leader, Trudeau, he's going around in a couple of jets. And when he's asked about that, he goes, well, the Liberal Party will just purchase some carbon credits. I don't think that's the approach we should take. That somebody can pay us off to pollute. That is not our way. Our way is actually, we adapt our policies from the indigenous approach, like to keep the air, the water, and the soil clean. We look at everything at once, not just concentrate everything on CO2 emissions. There's more to the environment than that. And we're starting to see the effects of plastic getting into our food supply, into our seafood. I cringe almost every time I eat seafood now. So I think with our non-alarmist approach, we can come up with sensible solutions. We don't have all the answers. I'm not going to stand up here and say we got all the answers. We're going to go to the experts for the answers. We're going to see what the best methods are that they're being used in other parts of the world. Thank you.
Right,
Thomas, thanks for the question. And I don't know if you were around this community about 8 years ago when we had smog advisory days, the burning of coal plants, and the Liberal government provincial canceled that. And we haven't had a smog day in 8 years probably. So I know when I was mayor, I got calls from the paper and said, you know, what can you do about smog days? Well, there wasn't anything I could do personally, but thank God that we're not burning coal, and you know, we're phasing out coal in the rest of Canada. We're funding transit. We've funded transit in Belleville and Quinte West and in the county, and I know the mayors are trying to do a transit hub for all three communities. Transit is expensive, so we're investing billions of dollars in transit, get cars off the road basically in this community, walkable community, and it's about design. And I live in Ottawa, and I live in a walkable community, so I park my car, and for 2 weeks I don't see it. Here it's been poor planning, and you know, communities have to plan better and put a house in a community and in a grocery store and a post office and everything close by, and I think that'll really help our environment here. We're also offering $40,000 interest-free loans for 10 years for renovation and housing for greening, free home inspections for greening also. So there's lots of tools in the toolbox. Locally, I think, you know, again, being at Loyalist here, and our generation like yourself need to talk about things, and it's about impressing that opinions on our children and that growing up. Thank you.
Before we hear from Danny, I'd like to ask everyone again, if you have any questions you'd like to ask the candidate, please stand at one of these microphones and we'll get to your question after this one. All right, so Danny, this It's your turn.
Good question, Thomas. No way I can cover this in the short time span. But what we need to do is we need to get every one of our households, all right? We got to get them into an electric vehicle. We've got to get every one of our households retrofitted onto solar panels, for example. Every one of them. How are we going to do that? Some people can't afford what it costs to get those things. We need somebody walking around with a clipboard and financing it for them. Interest-free loans, grants, assistance, loan guarantees, whatever it's going to take. We need to add up how many vehicles we're going to need, how many solar panels we're going to need. Then we need our Prime Minister to go and talk to our manufacturers, our industries, and start producing them. We've got to get this done. 60% by 2030, carbon reductions, 0 carbon emissions by 2050. We have to act on this. We've got to get going. We've got to start working on the supply so we can make this transition. And yes, I am an alarmist. Thank you.
Now we'll hear from Stephanie.
Hi, Thomas. Thank you for your question. So the NDP party has been very taken by this Green New Deal that was kind of being talked about down in the United States, especially by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and some other senators there. And we kind of reformatted it and called it the New Deal for People, NDP. So we believe that at this point we need to have a holistic approach to taking on climate change. So we believe that we have to build affordable, efficient housing, retrofit housing that already exists so that it's super efficient, that we're getting away from using fossil fuels at all costs, and actually immediately ending all subsidies to fossil fuels. So that's kind of on a more macro level, and it's a 100-page plan. You could go on there and look at just almost anything that you could think about, social justice, climate action, tied together, because they have to go together at this point. We have to include everyone at the table because it's going to affect people who are very, especially people who are of low income or who are in poverty the most. So we have to make sure we have those services in place so that when we put in place subsidies, removing those subsidies and changing our economy, that we're taking care of those people. On a local level, I have been saying I believe that it's really great to take part in education, so starting local campaigns. I have this plastic-free PEC water bottle right here. I really believe that that's a really good approach, starting little campaigns and continuing with that, and I also believe in just planting trees. I think that's super important. Thank you.
Before we get to our next question, if the candidates want to debate the question amongst with each other, then this is your time.
Ooh. Yes.
It's an open forum. We can just go
Yeah.
at it.
Yep. Open forum with each other.
This whole thing about retrofitting, have all electric cars. Well, the car manufacturers are doing it. They're changing their business models. They know what's going on, but nobody's had the guts to.
Our emissions have gone up.
This is
No,
totally
I agree, but
not
you know what?
true.
You can't have all electric cars and all
We've never
electric
done this
furnaces at the same time. We don't have enough power. We're losing.
Our emissions have
Pickering.
gone up, Paul.
Okay, well, how are we?
That means
how are
it's
we gonna-
not working.
okay.
Whatever we've been doing is not working.
How are you going to?
We need to
Where
act.
is the
We
clean
need
energy?
to work. We need to take the trajectory and move it the other direction.
Danny, you tell me, what are we going to do?
Relying on the
after-
private sector to deal with this situation has not worked so far in any way. We cannot rely on that in any way. We have to hold large polluters to account. And to continue to think that this thinking is accurate is such a fallacy. It's a lie. And don't
Yes.
believe it.
We've had
Yeah.
decade after decade after decade. We've had 3 decades of being told that we're going to be in this situation. We keep kicking the can down the road, and it does not get done.
Yeah.
Now we've run out of time. Instead of the trajectory being like this, it's creeped up, and now it's like this.
And now we're running out of power. They're going to close the nuclear power
There's
plant
no
in Pickering in 2024.
running out of power.
What's going to happen
Actually,
then?
Ontario currently produces
I
more
saw the
power
sun
than it
out
can
today.
actually use and sells it to the United States for less than the cost that it makes. So like that cost to make it. So that's just a lie. Again, a lie.
One of the things when we're looking at changing over to electric vehicles, and it's certainly the way things are transitioning, that this is something that is going to be a reality. Now, one of the things that's also going to need to be ramped up when we're doing this is actually the mining process, because the batteries in the vehicles. There are particular minerals that are in these batteries, and we have to ramp up production because I think there's certain countries that have.
No, that's actually not a good idea either. Currently, our Canadian corporations that do mining in other countries are terrible and do very bad things to people who are Indigenous. So it's also not a good idea.
So how do we get the batteries then? How do we get the batteries if we don't mine the
very
minerals?
super efficient, and we need to be good at mining in our own country, possibly, but we need to.
But the minerals aren't
not,
here.
We need to throw a lot of money into research and development on batteries. Batteries are the key. We need to be able to store energy, and we need to go beyond even batteries. Every one of us here, as I'm talking to you right now, I am expending energy. Where did I get that energy from? I'm storing it in myself from the meals I've eaten, right? So there's even biological storage. We need to fund our researchers. We've got the scientists and everything in the universities. We've got to give them the money and give them the tools and get the hell out of their way and let them improve on energy storage. That's the key. By the way, electric vehicles is not something of the future. Norway, more than 50% of all new cars sold there are electric. It's doable.
All right, Danny, we'll move on to Paul. We'll move on to Paul.
Yeah, I just want to say that in the last 4 years, the $80 billion that was wasted by Trudeau, with half of that, $40 billion, we could have retrofitted every furnace in Canada to electric. But then we didn't have the power for it. But the good news is with that other $40 billion he wasted, we could have built 4 nuclear plants. We could have been ahead of the game. We need money to do this.
Where have you been for the last 60 years advocating against this?
Money.
I don't understand that, okay? You're 60 years old and you're complaining about a situation that you could have been dealing with for all this time. Where have you been advocating for this?
I've been advocating for 40 years. Government moves too slow. That's why I'm running. I move quick.
All right, Neil, would you like to make a comment?
I'm just enjoying watching this, so. I guess my comments, and again, before we go total electric vehicles, it's 2050. The technology's not there, and I think that you're right that we have to invest as much with universities and colleges like this for research. I know we're doing some research on cannabis and things here. There can be some homegrown ideas in the Bay of Quinte, and I know we have great students here and a great college. Thank you.
All right. Now we'll move on to our next question. All right. Can I get your name?
My name's Craig Jackman, and I'm on faculty here at Loyalist College. My question concerns the Phoenix pay system, which is the pay system that pays government employees and government contractors. It was set up under the previous Conservative government on a single bidder contract. And in August of 2015, the Conservative government was told it wasn't going to work, that there were systematic problems. In March of 2016, the Liberal government launched Phase 1 and had immediate reports of thousands of federal government employees not being paid, being overpaid, or being underpaid. Despite of that, in May of 2016, they launched Phase 2, the other half of the system, and there has been a non-stop list of employees being drastically overpaid, being drastically underpaid, students being hired for summer jobs and never being paid. Right now, the government is still 2 years behind in payroll changes. So instead of a system that was supposedly going to save the taxpayers $70 million a year, we're now faced as taxpayers with $2.3 billion in replacement fees. To all candidates, what would your government do to clean up and expedite this system? Thank you.
All right. We'll go to Tim.
The Phoenix pay system, from the beginning, as Craig had alluded to, we've seen problems. And as those problems go on, we've discovered that there's more issues with it. And a government has 2 choices to make. They can either keep kicking the rock down the road and seeing the costs go up and up. We saw a provincial government that spent about $1 billion trying to build a gas plant for energy that they didn't need. And what the Liberal government did in Ontario was decide to say, well, we'll move it to Napanee instead. So it ended up costing $1 billion. We see programs that get implemented, And if there's an issue, they need to be looked at. We're seeing it right now with the International Joint Commission and the flood issues in the area. So when we see problems like the Phoenix pay system and an individual's not getting paid or overpaid or underpaid or issues just even getting anything, it needs to be looked at and it needs to be addressed. And I think it has to start immediately.
All right. Now we'll hear from Paul.
The problem is government's too big, and we want to cut the size of government. It makes no sense. I've been a manager all my life and a business owner, and the government now spends about half our tax money to operate the government. It would be impossible to run a business that way. That's not the formula. And we're probably spending at least 25% too much to operate this country. And that is the problem. It's so big, we can't even handle a bloody payroll. I used to do payroll, and it's very simple if you have systems in place. And obviously, they get so complicated with their systems, as we saw in Ontario when they were trying to do a system for e-health and blew $2 billion of our tax money there. There's too much money wasted in government, and we have to start cutting. And we're not saying we're going to fire a bunch of people. We would do it through attrition, through a slow process, the way we actually want to do it to get rid of supply management, for example, so everybody can have cheaper eggs and poultry and dairy as well. Thank you.
Craig, thanks for the question, and our office has handled many a complaint. My personal opinion is we should blow it up and start over, but I don't make those decisions. I think in Australia it took over 7 years to get their Phoenix system up and running. I know the Conservatives initiated the system and laid off many of the clerks and payroll e's that did the other work, so we're building it back up. I don't know, I hope it's 7 years, hope that they revamp it. We seem to solve 3 cases in our office, and then we have 5 more come back in. Myself, I was overpaid. We've straightened that out.
That's
but
true.
A lot of people have been underpaid too. So, that's the way it works. Thank you.
Danny, we'll hear from you now.
I believe IBM is the vendor behind the Phoenix pay system. They originally made a quote to deliver what was promised. They failed to do it. I don't know how much it cost originally. What was it, $200 million, something ridiculous, a lot of money. Now it's going to be another $2 billion or something like that to clean it up, and nothing has worked since day one. I am in the computer software and data business. What you got there with the Phoenix system is what I call spaghetti code. You cannot fix this. You got to scrap it, and you got to start over. Get a responsible vendor. If you fail to do that, then at least make IBM pay for not delivering for what they promised under contract. How are we contracting with these vendors if they don't deliver on what they promise? This is ridiculous. We're going on in a decade with this thing. This thing needs to be completely rebooted, start over, and get it done right. Don't make it do more than it can by tying everything into one system. Build systems that will work. Computers are stupid. They will do what you tell them to do. So get a responsible vendor and fix it. Thank you.
All right, now we'll hear from Stephanie.
Yeah, so to me, this speaks to me about workers' rights. So I think at large what we're seeing here is the fact that we don't currently respect workers' rights, and that when people are working, that they need to get paid adequately and effectively, and that this is an injustice to those workers. It's also an injustice to our taxpayers who are paying those bills and not getting adequately compensated for the services that we haven't received yet. So I don't know why this isn't an issue around, fining the company that hasn't delivered on their services and then holding them to account for that. It does say here that the Conservatives did begin this program, so I want to make sure that we're talking about who began the issue and then why that they chose a tender that didn't understand the technology that they were trying to deal with. But again, I think it just speaks to that, frankly, for the last couple decades, we have not respected workers' rights. We don't believe that workers have value, and that I think we need to get back to those values, that when people are working, they deserve to get adequately paid and on time, and that they shouldn't have to worry about getting a paycheck or not. Thank you.
Now we'll move into the 5-minute debate. Again, we ask you guys not to talk over each other and listen. We'll start with Tim.
I had an opportunity over the last few weeks to talk with some of the employees that work at one of the penitentiaries in the area. And one of the corrections officers, she said to me, you spend your day at times dealing with prisoners, and at times you could be dealing with a life and death situation, and then you go home and you wonder, do I have a paycheck? And there's a serious concern with that, because so many of us in this room, they did a study that said 50% of Canadian households right now are $200 or less away from not being able to pay their bills. And for a corrections worker or other federal employees, I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of them, to not have that consistency, that's a serious concern. And absolutely, I think we're in agreement here that this needs to be addressed.
Paul?
I would just add that there's somewhere in the world there's got to be a system that works that we can adapt. I always wonder why we always have to create something new. Computer programming is very complicated. I have friends of mine that do that for a living. And even the simplest thing is very complicated, like going to the bank machine. So this one is much more complex when you have so many people involved. And there's got to be a system somewhere we can adapt, and that's what I would do. I look for a system somewhere instead of trying to build one, because when you build something, you don't know what it's going to cost. These guys are paid a lot of money, $100 an hour, $200 an hour. I know what my friends get. It's stupid money.
And I think I'll just add to the Phoenix system, a lot of it, Craig, is overtime, and people are afraid to put overtime in because it does screw up their pay. And then the other thing are new employees, and we did have employees that worked actually in the riding, students that didn't get paid all last summer. So it's something that we can do better, something that we're pressing for, and hopefully it gets solved sooner than later and not as long as Australia.
We're all talking about the outcomes of the problem. The outcomes are the screw-ups, and this is how it hits everybody home. The problem is the software code behind it. The system has to be scrapped. It's called spaghetti code. Spaghetti code is when you have multiple coders creating all different lines of code. That now every time that you do something else to that code, something else sneaks up and affects everything else. That's how it works, all right? You've got spaghetti code. You got to take it out. You got to get rid of the entire system, okay? It's going to, even if you fix this element, it's going to now affect then something else, and these problems are going to continue. Your software is no good. Need new software, need new code, need new system. That's the answer to this. Throwing more money on it just creates more spaghetti on top of the spaghetti, as they call it. Thanks.
Stephanie, would you like to make a comment?
Yeah, I guess I just feel like the reality is that they need to come up with a system immediately for those people to be compensated. So if they have to go back to just having a regular pay system at this point, and that's not digital, if they can't figure out technology and figure out how to hire a company, a vendor like that, then they should go back to just a traditional kind of workplace by workplace compensation system, and they need to pay the workers. That's what they need to do. So they cannot continue in this way, and we should be holding them to account. This can't continue on. It's not okay for people to not get paid and not know if they can afford groceries or their rent. Not okay.
All right, we'll move on to the next question. Can we just get your name, sir?
Hi, good evening. My name is Peter Dudding, and I'm part-time faculty here at Loyalist. First of all, to the candidates, thanks for your service to democracy in Canada. Pleasure to see you all here this evening. My question is about post-secondary education in the 21st century, because again, amongst all those pressing problems, one of them is going to be having a well-educated, well-prepared population and workforce in an increasingly competitive environment. And I wonder, I know, Neil, you've spoken to the issue already, but I would address my question to all of the candidates in terms of how do you see the problem of post-secondary education, and particularly the costs related to it, and what's your party prepared to do in order to assist our students to get the kind of education we so desperately need them to have?
All right, we'll start with Paul.
When it comes to education, it's a shame that sometimes we could miss out on talent. Like Banting, when he developed the cure, or not the cure, but insulin to deal with diabetes. And I think that's a shame. And I really think that there should be at least put some program in place now, because it's hard right now to say, okay, free post-secondary education for everybody. But I think that should be the future. But in the interim, people that have really great marks, and if they can't afford to continue their education, the state should pay for them. Should pay for their education. We shouldn't lose a valuable person that has a great brain on them. That's part of our system. It's part of Canada growing. And I think with the People's Party, when we cut out a lot of the money that's leaving the country and leaving our economy, we'll have more money in the country to deal with the problem.
Okay, and I did address that question a little bit in my speech, and increase federal grants. Last election, we did increase federal grants. There's a lot of students that can't afford to go to school. Problem with free tuition, there's a lot of people that can't afford to go to school. So, the increase of maximum grants for people that are living on the verge of not being able to make it. The other thing is interest-free loans, or interest-free payments for 2 years. I mean, I know when I finished school, it took a little while to find a job, and I started my own business, but I mean, to get right out of school and make those payments are quite difficult. So I believe it's an upward amount too, that you have to be making $35,000. So there's a catch point after the 2 years too. If you don't make enough, that you'll still be able to have a grace period interest-free. And then in this platform, again, it's raising families. And I know my daughter is graduating this year from the Brock part of the nursing, and she has almost engaged, and I know she's going to want to start a family sooner than we did. That interest-free payment will, help on the 5 years to raise a family. Thank you.
All right, now we'll hear from Danny.
Raise the taxes on the 1%, tuition-free schools. Post-secondary education, if you're good enough to be accepted into a post-secondary program, you should be able to afford to go there. Our country benefits as you pick up that education. So your country should be able to afford to help you get through that. There's no reason people starting out their lives should be burdened with the ridiculous amount of debt that you now get by the time you finish school. The wealthy have benefited from your education, from our education, from the people we've educated. They benefited from the roads, the infrastructure, everything else that we do together as a society. The wealthy can now afford to pay some back. It's ridiculous how much income disparity and all the rest of it we have right now. It's time for them to pay back, and one of the things that money we use is for paying for education. Thank you.
Now we'll hear from Stephanie.
Yeah, I'm actually somebody who's still paying back their student loan almost a decade later. So for me, it's very personal. I feel that issue because I know what it's like to have them send me some mail that says they want me to pay $350 a month and wonder, how the heck do you think I'm going to do that? So I think that if we want to invest in young people, if we want to invest in making sure that we can transition to this green economy that's so important that we've been talking about, is by making sure that people can go to school for free whenever they want at any time, young or old, and so that people can go and get retrained at any point whenever they need to, because regardless of your age, sometimes you just need to go get re-educated so that you can move forward in life. That's what we need. We need to be able to continue to have a workforce that is educated, and the NDP is totally for that. They would immediately end all interest on student loans if elected. Thank you.
All right, now we'll hear from Tim.
One of the things, my daughter just started daycare, and that's one of the things you start thinking about, is trying to put that squirreling away of money for the future and making sure that your children have that money put away. And with that, right now, my wife and I, we're having trouble, like many Canadians, paying the bills that are currently in front of us, let alone trying to save $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 for down the road. The focus has to be on making life more affordable. We're talking to people time and time again that they're getting by, but they're not getting ahead. Getting ahead isn't, taking trips around the world. Getting ahead may be your furnace breaks down and you try to do a repair, or there's something wrong with your car, or your child wants to do piano lessons or play hockey. It's about making life affordable, and we're going to do a universal tax credit. That's going to help you afford more things. It will benefit those making under $47,000 the most.
Now we'll start our 5-minute debate. Who would like to start? Paul.
Yeah, our party believes in equality and fairness. When I hear about this, so let's raise the rich, let's take another 1% from them. So when I kept hearing that, I did an analysis.
I want to take more than 1%.
Well, let me give you an analysis, and this is, I've done this. You take the money away from the 25 richest families in Canada. Take all their money away, not 1%, all of the riches, all their houses, their expensive cars, their gold, their jewelry. It would only cover 17% of our national debt, which costs us $54 million a day in interest alone. See, we have a plan. We need to shrink government. It's so obvious we need to do this. And, but, you know, the major parties, they love what's happening. They've been in power for 152 years. They use your money to make you vote for them. They use your money. And so far, it's been working for 152 years. And they're happy when you come out and you demean our party leader by saying, he's a racist. He's not a racist. I met this man a few times. He's a good man. He was under the Harper government for 10 years. He was beat up for Scheer for the leadership. He basically got cheated out of that.
All right, Danny.
Income disparity has gone up. We all know it. It's obvious. Back when I was in, it's been a while now, I guess late 60s, early 70s, when I was in grade 7, 8, and 9, I remember being promised that the increase in technology and productivity would be, and result in 4-day work weeks and then 3-day work weeks, that the prosperity of it all would be shared by all of us. Well, this has not happened. As Stephanie can attest here, who's working 3 jobs right now. It's the opposite that's happening. All right? We need to move that needle. The 1% have benefited and taken everything. That's all gone somewhere. All of this prosperity and automation has gone somewhere. We've got to rebalance that, rejig it. We needed a fairer, more progressive tax system. These people have to pay their share, and we need those 4-day work weeks off. I want to collect on that promise, what I was promised back when I was in grade 7.
Would anyone else like to make a comment?
I mean, I think some of the promises of the past have led to a generation that has been a little bit confused about what is realistic. And so as a young person who grew up kind of coming into my working years when the recession was happening, I think that I in no way believe in those promises. And it's always funny as a young person, they try to tell us millennials that we're lazy or somehow, you know, feel very righteous or something. But I find that so funny because I sit here and you're talking about I'm working 3 jobs, and I don't know anyone in Prince Edward County, a young person, that's not working like that. So it's just this delusional thought that the past was so great and we got to get back to that. It's not true, and it definitely has not provided for me those realities.
I'm not saying that the past was great. I'm saying that the promises of the past have not been delivered.
Yeah, I think some of I guess it just harkens back to me like the 50s and this idea that we could have endless things, that we could buy all the things that we ever wanted, and that consumerism was going to just be an endless supply for us. And that is not the case. We have a finite planet. It's not working out. Yeah, there was something else I wanted to address over here, but it's left my mind now. I'm sorry.
And I just wanted to make a couple of comments, Peter. It's about it's about investing in our students, but investing in our capital buildings. And the federal government has invested in Loyalist here through the cannabis program and through the nursing wing of rebuilding the nursing wing. The college is getting older, and the provincial government obviously has stopped their funding to fund schools for energy efficient and things like that, where the federal government has picked that up. So it's not only providing students a place, it's also providing a good building for students to learn in. Thank you.
All right. That's the end of our 5-minute debate. We'll move on to our next question. What's your name?
Hi, I'm Stephen, former student of Loyalist, but just kind of like a general question, I suppose. But for TV and internet, every single person that is living alone or potentially with somebody else has a cell phone for sure, and then internet's another one that kind of pops up, and those are expensive. And every single year it seems that cell phone bills are going higher and higher. And just doing some research, it doesn't seem like there's a lot to potentially like regulate that at all. Do your parties have anything in regards to internet cell phone bills or anything that can affect every single family?
All right, we'll start with Neil.
Okay, so I mentioned it's a quick answer, 25% reduction in cell phone bills. Part of the internet is building it out, so pricing-wise, there's nothing on that in the platform. We've invested in cell phone service too. Also, in the area, cell phones aren't the best as you get north of the 401. So the last budget, I believe we invested, along with the province and the municipalities, $72 million to have better cell phone and emergency cell phone service. Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to Danny.
Yeah, phone companies, I curse them all the time. TV, internet, I don't have TV anymore. I'm YouTube junkie. I can even go through the commercials, zip through them by watching the news. You know, after it happened, it takes it down to 22 minutes instead of 30 minutes of even my time. Internet access, everybody has a right to internet access at this point, and we've got to be able to get it in everybody's hands. There's a lot that we got to need to do on the rural communities on that end. But I'm looking at affordable housing units, for example, that we put together. Well, one Wi-Fi serves all the units, and then the cost really is shared. And I think we can do a lot of that hub and spoke type of thing by community and all that to bring costs down. And it's a huge opportunity just waiting for us to put it out there. So I think we could go a long way there. This industry's matured. We can all now benefit from it. Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Stephanie.
Yeah, I just wanted to be accurate here, so I looked it up. So our party's plan includes, so no more huge bills. We don't believe that you should have to pay an astronomical amount of money for your cell phone bill. We should be in alignment with other kind of developed countries and what they're paying. We want to make sure that there's just a basic plan so that everyone can have access, because people need to be able to access their cell phone. They're being able to call each other. So even if you're of low income, you should be able to have a phone. There should be no more data caps. So yeah, there should be unlimited data at a reasonable cost, basically. You know, other countries have that, and very developed countries, and even I've been to Indonesia, Guatemala. You can go there and get a cell phone for very cheap, and you can get data for very cheap as well. It's really affordable. So I don't know why they have it and we don't, and that we want to have a telecom consumers bill of rights, because these are things that we all need to have, and they should be affordable for just the regular person. Thank you.
All right, next we'll hear from Tim.
When you allow 2 or 3 companies to kind of run amok, you end up with a country that has the highest cell phone bills in the world. One of the concerns with that is if you allow it to continue, I'm trying to think of the cost. So right now we're about $1,200 a year for my wife's phone, and that's not out of the norm for a lot of people in this room. I think that's certainly very comparable. I think it's Great Britain. You go, and I think it's about £8 a month for their plan. And I know sometimes people will use 3G, and that could be a day, especially with their overages. But when you open things up to competition, you allow for more combativeness with the prices. So if somebody comes in on that spectrum, and right now we only have a couple of companies that are kind of running things, the more you allow the private sector to compete against one another, the better off those prices will be.
All right, next we'll hear from Paul.
Our party plan is to reduce cell phone costs, and as well for the internet. Like these cell phone companies, they're just stealing from us. If you just look at Rogers, the money they're making, they bought the Dome Stadium for $25 million, and that was funded with taxpayer money of $600 million. At the time, I was a volunteer in Scarborough. I said, that's wrong. The public should not fund that. I called that one right. I called a couple of things in the past right, and I'll call this one right. If our party gets in, or even if we get 3 or 4 members there, and if there's a minority government, we're going to make a huge difference, this party, in this country, because we will reduce those fees. These guys are ripping us off. That is the bottom line. They're ripping us off. We got to stop it.
All right, now we're going to start our 5-minute debate. First, we'll go to Tim, and then we'll come to Danny.
One of the things I was curious about is the Liberal plan to drop things by 25%. but we haven't had any explanation other than the Prime Minister saying that he was going to go and ask them really nicely. So I'm curious about how we're going to get 25% reduction unless we open up further competition.
All right, Danny?
Steve, do you by chance use Virgin Mobile? Yeah? You know what really gets me about this outfit? Every time I call them or do anything or they send me something, it's, hey, member. Since when did I join a club? Hey? Really, man. I mean, I did not join a club. I am a customer. It's a phone, not a club.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I just, you know, the arrogance of these companies, it just grates at me.
So everybody's on the same page for that then? Everybody's looking at kind of like reducing costs if possible for cell phones and potentially internet?
Yeah, phone companies piss everybody off.
Stephanie?
Well, I mean, I would say that there's a bit of a disparity here because we're talking about a complaint about a large company where I was just saying that we need to make sure that we're holding those people to account and making them pay their fair share. And then our compatriot over here is saying that he doesn't think it's right, but at the same time says that we shouldn't be taxing them. So it's a bit of a conflict there for sure. I don't think that that is accurate. He's saying on the one hand that he thinks it's okay to not tax them, but on the other hand that it's okay, that it's not right what they're doing to us. So I'm confused a little bit now again. Sorry? I'm Paul there. Yeah, why is it's not okay in this instance for them to charge us so much and make so much money, but before when I was talking about taxation, you were like, well, it's not going to work out to do that. So which is it? Do you see what I'm saying?
Sorry, I don't get what you're saying.
Yeah, so earlier when we were talking about, and even just Danny here was talking about taxing the rich, and you're trying to say that there's not enough money there.
No.
But
What
then
I'm
at the
saying,
same
no.
time, just now with this question, you're saying that it's okay that we should make them
You
pay
guys
for
are going
it.
around it the wrong way. There's lots of money there with corporation and offshore money. There's billions of dollars. That's what we have to get. And I actually talked to somebody at Revenue Canada. I said, what the hell's going on? I'm $10 short. You're bugging me in the mail every other day, and somebody's phoning me up. I had problems with the Revenue Canada a few years ago because I can't do my taxes. I got to hire somebody. He makes a mistake, and it's my fault. Well, did you sign that? Revenue Canada says, did you sign that form? Yes, I did. Well, it's your fault. It's your form. You signed it. But I don't understand it. That's why I hire somebody. So there's something wrong with this whole system. The People's Party wants to redo this whole government. It's just sickening. The wasted money, bad regulations. We want to cut regulation. We would make this a great country, and you'd have more money in your pocket, and the cost of living would be a lot cheaper for you.
Neil, would you like to make a comment?
And I guess it's back to Stephen. Yes, it is in our platform to reduce cell phone bills by 25%. So if elected, we will. Thank you. And it's through competition.
Well, I'm just wondering, is it strictly to open the private sector, or are we going to go them? Because the Prime Minister said that he was going to work with the companies. Well, a company is not going to simply lower their prices because we write them a stern
And he
letter.
said work with the companies, and if not, open up the market.
Well, it needs to be opened up, absolutely. That's one thing we can agree on.
All right. We'll move on to our next question. Can you just tell us your name, sir?
Pardon me? Sorry? Will?
So I'm here asking a question. It's on affordable housing and affordable rent. I'm here on behalf of a friend of mine who is a single mother. She's a recent graduate from one of the health programs here. She not only works that job, she also works 2 other jobs just to say that she's broke. And oftentimes she has to make some pretty tough choices which involve whether or not she's going to be able to afford to see her daughter or not. This question is to all parties. What are your intents on affecting that situation in the immediate term, the near term, and the long term in this riding?
All right. First, we'll hear from Danny.
Awesome question, Will. Actually, it doesn't affect just young people, single mothers. It affects seniors. It affects a lot of people I know, all demographics, all age groups. We've got a lack of supply. I've got a plan that I'm working on with local councils throughout the riding with a target, 1-bedroom units at $500 a month rent. Okay, safe, affordable communities. Everybody has a right to a safe, comfortable home. That's a basic right. How can you go on or do anything with your life if you don't have a home? At $500 a month, I believe it can be done. I don't think our developers are going to do it because our developers are going to continue to build the custom high-end homes because there's more money in it. There's higher margins in it. Our councils have to play ball too because they only approve the things, the building that is on higher tax rolls and brings in more revenue. Working together, we can produce $500 a month units. There's more to it, but my time's up.
All right, Stephanie?
I think the most important thing on a local level is to make sure, so the federal government funds the province properly, so through fair taxation and generating enough funds that we're properly disseminating money to the province, because through that, then they can disseminate it to the municipalities who are starved for cash right now, especially rurally, and they need the money in order to build affordable housing. They have all these plans, they'll have committees, they have all kinds of groups that get together and talk about it, but because they lack the funds, they just can't do those projects that they desperately need, they know they need to do. So part of that is making sure that we're getting proper funds sent from the government to those people, the province and the municipalities, and also having fair criteria, especially for our area where it's more rural. Often we get kind of missed in those projects because it seems like it's not as important, but rurally over the whole province and probably across Canada, we have been left behind as far as affordable housing, and so we have to make sure that we have advocates who are strongly saying that we need fair criteria for rural areas. That's why I'm here.
All right, we'll go to Tim.
Will, as far as the friend of yours, I wish it was a unique story. I really do, because it's far too common. And I think what you're going to find across the spectrum from the people up here is that we need more of this. We need more housing. And one of the things Danny had alluded to is the fact that we see a supplier that they can come in, and with the cost of land, that's right where it starts. So if a plot of land, for instance, is $175,000, they're not going to put a building that doesn't yield a proper financial return. The municipalities work at ground zero with these developers. They only get about 5% of the taxation to work with. So when we're talking about the federal government's role in this, it's about finding the municipalities that are going to, I guess to use a term, play ball with the builders, because as those municipalities see it, it's going to turn jobs, it's going to bring more people to a riding, and if you can build a sixplex as opposed to a high-end home, you're going to have more people in the riding, more people to work in that area.
All right, we'll move on to Paul.
Governments work too slow. This has been an issue for 40 years. How do I know that? I wrote a report on housing and affordable housing and homelessness 40 years ago. I had the Minister of Housing for Canada at a public meeting I had, and a bunch of other government people, and it's been the same thing. Government here works too slow. In Quinte West, the municipality bought the College Street Public School. It'll be 2 years this January, and it's still sitting there. They gave the demolition permit, but they work way too slow. Now, again, this is such a perfect example, and it's not the only example of issues that resurface election after election. I feel like going like this to some people and say, wake up, wake up. Don't you remember the last election? Don't you remember about the deficit then? Don't you remember about our debt before? Don't you remember about affordability? Please, everybody, remember.
All right, now we'll go to Neil Ellis.
And you had a short, medium, will, and a long term, and I appreciate the question. How did this happen? On the short term, basically, the federal government got out of housing in the 90s, and no government has really invested till our government did, and we've invested $5.2 million in the riding. Is that enough? No, it's not enough. In the long term, we do have to invest more. Long term, our housing strategy calls for to cut homelessness in half, I believe, by 2030, and build a million affordable houses by the year 2030. Is that enough? Still not enough. We're best in buildings and housing. We unfortunately have a lot to catch up on due to the fact that there just hasn't been any units built. The private sector is partnering with us. They are not geared to income places, but reduced rent. So market value rent would be for one bedroom around $990. They rent for around $600. So these units, although all of a sudden filled as soon as they can build them, that's the problem. There's a waiting list for them. So what do we have to do better? We have to get more money into the riding to build more units. I think as a government as a whole, we have a housing program. We can't go back to past governments that didn't really invest in affordable housing. Thank you.
All right, now we'll open our 5-minute debate. We're going to start with Stephanie, and then we're going to go to Tim.
I mean, I'm not going to debate something here. I just wanted to add some more points. So as far as the NDP is going, we're interested and believe that we should start by adding 500,000 new units immediately, investing $5 billion the first year in affordable housing, because it seriously is holding us back from having workers who can live where they need to. And especially to do with climate change, we need to make sure that our homes are near where we're working, so that we're not traveling so far, so that we don't necessarily need a car, that we can take our transit and our bicycles there. And we want to be innovative in what we're building, so we want to retrofit things, we want to make them really efficient so they're super uber affordable for the regular person, and also thinking about building smaller homes or co-housing, so that's living with somebody and kind of changing the way we think about housing, because some of the affordability is being able to build something smaller and live maybe in a co-op or in a co-house situation. Those are some of the other things that the NDP are interested in. Thanks.
All right, now we'll go to Tim.
One of the things Stephanie alluded to was that they want to build 500,000 more homes. And that's certainly an admirable thing, because my assumption is that we all believe that the supply is the issue. Now, one of the concerns that we have is the rollout of getting it done. And where the concern starts is the low number of skilled trades that we have in this country. The fact is right now, one of the reasons the housing prices continue to go up is that there's a supply and demand issue with the builders. Now, of course, it would be easy to say we want to get more skilled trade workers, and then, of course, we want to build more houses, and those are noble things. The concern we also have is making sure that we're bringing people in with that skilled trade ability, so that we can get them to work. I know I've talked to a few homeowners that have said, I'm just trying to get a contractor to build my house or renovate my house, and just the wait time is there. So I think a lot of it has to go back to the education and implementation of hiring more skilled workers too.
Yeah, this is about, Tim, pretty well on the right track here. This is about some cooperation here, okay? Neil here, federal government, offers to invest more money. We got to get the province to pony up some money for this too. We need our municipal governments here to permit these things and not be in the way of that. Okay? We've got to set up trade people coming right out of school. You've got trade people coming right out of school. My son is one. Electricians, plumbers, and all these guys, set them up as their own independent contractors and give them all the work they need. Some people working for these developers, builders who are just after the money, will quit and work on their own jobs, and we'll give them all the work they need. In terms of locations, right downtown in Belleville here, for example, what about that old arena? Can we retrofit that and make that into a bunch of one-bedroom units? What about all those vacant upper floors in all the downtown buildings? Let's retrofit that and make that into it. Let's build communities where everybody knows each other's names and it's safe, and they can become co-ops. So after 20, 25 years of paying the government back for the cost of building it, you actually even end up owning it, and you run your own government, your own community. It can work. We need to do it. $500 a month rent.
Now we'll go to Paul.
The realities are we're all going to go home tonight because we have homes. This is an issue that needs immediate attention. Today on the Lauren Brooker show, I gave a challenge to the listeners. I said, if you have a room in your house, rent it out to somebody. I rent out rooms in my house. I have a high-end house, sorry, I can't talk about this, and I rent rooms out for $400 a month. I knew of a family with 8 children. Their children were separated from them because they couldn't find a house big enough. I was able to buy them a house that they rent from me, below market rent. I haven't raised their rent in 3 years. We all have to do our part now. We can't wait for the government to catch up to these people. They're unfortunate people. My girlfriend, she's on ODSP. She pays market rent, and she can't survive. She can't pay her bills. She can't eat, and I have to help her.
All right.
And I just wanted to say quickly before we finish off, Prince Edward County has a unique problem. Of course, a lot of these are regional issues. Wellington, every other house is an Airbnb, and not everyone's going to be as noble as offering $400 a month. I commend you for that. But if people have the opportunity to make money, they're going to make money. And when you have a tourism industry like Prince Edward County does, every other house is an Airbnb, so there's going to be some trickiness with those laws as well.
My units are essentially sort of government-owned, with ultimate ownership going to the people who are actually renting them. They're called co-op units. They sort of end up becoming into a condominium type deal where everybody gets a say on how the whole unit and all that is structured. So everybody has a say, and that makes everybody actually have the pride of ownership, and you can actually create a sense of community so that when you go to work in the morning or go to wherever you're going, people know your name and they say, you know, good morning, Danny. Hi, Danny. Have a great day, Danny. You get a better life that way, too. There's quality as well involved in this. Thanks.
Neil, would you like to make a comment before we end the debate?
And I'd just like to add, it's about municipalities and changing their zoning, and Danny was right. Some municipalities won't let you build tiny homes. They won't let you make a basement apartment. I know some of it's fire code, but some of it's due to municipality and planning. So if we want to make more people and condense our population into a smaller growth area, we have to have better planning from the province and municipalities to allow that. Thank you.
All right. So we'll move on to our next question. Can you just tell us your name and your program?
Hi, my name's Taylor Elliott. I'm in the Social Service Worker Program. What I'd like to know is what your actual plan is regarding mental health in the area and nationally. It's all great to hear everyone talking about it again and people are hearing and knowing it's an issue, but all I see is talk, and it's more important to get like psychiatrists there, because I waited like 6 months because I wasn't in crisis. It seems the only thing getting implemented is crisis, where we don't have actual long-term care to help people after, like, yeah, you're on your feet again, but how are you going to get that next step?
All right, we'll start with Stephanie.
Hi, Taylor. Thank you for asking this question. I was actually riding my bike, not here, but to work this morning, thinking about these issues. Because I think one of the systemic things about our society is that we don't value dealing with our mental health. And it's such a key part of having a healthy society, even though we don't recognize it on a regular basis. And I can say that for sure that our party has a plan to, we're talking about pharmacare, but we've also been saying that we want to, after that, make sure that we have whole body care. So that's mentally, that's, you know, vision, eye care, dealing with dental stuff. But for sure, thinking about mental health is so important, because I think some of the reasons why we still have kind of this lack of diversity in our elections. This is a bit of a weird tangent, but I think it's because we don't value mental health and value having women and these kind of more softer approaches. So even though I want to be gentle and kind, I feel like we end up wanting to attack each other, and this is part of the reason that mental health is so important. I can't get to this all in this little bit of time, I'm sorry. Anyways.
All right, we'll move on to Tim.
Well, the implementation of a lot of these programs is absolutely vital, but I do believe that we are at that stage where talk is still vital as well. And what I mean by that is that so often people will find issue with it, and things like Bell Let's Talk is good. But having the courage to step forward, whether it be anxiety or depression or PTSD, bipolar disorder. I just lost a family member with bipolar disorder. For myself, I've had depression since I went to Loyalist College. And thank God that there are medications, there's counseling, there's help for people. And one of the unique things with mental health that we find, I would ask if I can do a few more seconds here, if it's okay with my partners, is that with this issue, it is not a broken arm where somebody else has a broken arm, where somebody else has a broken arm. Each individual could be completely different with medications that they need, or counseling that they need, or trauma that they've gone through. And one of the things with the, I guess, the system that we have set up is it's overrun. A colleague of mine, he lost his son, and he said just to go find someone to talk to, it was this runaround game where he got sent to a hospital, then he got sent to a counselor, and then a private counselor, and then, well, this person's $250 an hour. And I know a lot of mental health issues have to do with provincial jurisdiction and healthcare, but a mental health strategy that is coast to coast, I think all my colleagues will agree, is something that has to be of high priority, because it's only getting to be a bigger problem. Sorry for going over.
All right, Paul?
This seems to be another 40-year issue. This is run in my family. My mom's had mental health issues. She's okay now. She's 89. She gets a shot every 3 weeks, and that keeps her level. That's not the case with a lot of other people. My sister, she's had a problem for 40 years. And she even says about this, Belle, let's talk. She says, talk about what? I have a problem. This one day of talking doesn't do anything. I think new technology has to be explored, and there is a bit of hope for us now in our family and my sister. There's this new magnetic treatment, but it's a long waiting list, so we're hoping to get my sister into that and see what happens there. And I know it's a frustrating thing, because I've gone through it for 40 years with my sister. And one time I remember going to her home. I was so aggravated with her taking this medication. She'd be high half the time. I flushed her medication down the toilet. She freaked out on me, and then I realized at that point, wow, this is a real serious issue. We have to deal with it. And back in maybe 20 years ago, $99 million went to redo the Queen Street Mental Health Center, and they seemed to be more focused with the employees than the patients, and that really bothered me.
All right, now we'll move on to Neil.
Taylor, thanks for your question. And I read a lot, and I do forget things, but I believe it was 2 out of 10 youth suffer from mental health, in that range, if I'm right. And so you can imagine, I have adult children or children, and so if you have 10 friends over, 2 of them possibly are suffering. We are starting a universal pharmacare, but in order to have pharmacare, you have to have family doctors and mental health specialists, so it's kind of this catch-22 situation. So we are going to enshrine it, and this is in our platform, that everybody's entitled to a family doctor and mental health specialty. Again, a lot of this agrees that it is provincial issues, but it's the federal government that takes leadership. And I know when I was Mayor of Belleville, we were short 15,000 patients for family doctors, and it was a provincial issue, but we knew it affected our community. So as mayor, we got into family recruitment doctors, and we recruited 21 doctors, and right now that program is still running. So it's about all levels of government getting together, but having it enshrined in our policy that we're going to get into doctor recruitment and mental health specialties, it's a long time coming. Thank you.
Now we'll hear from Danny.
I like what I'm hearing on this completely. I'm just going to add one thing. Stephanie might want to have time, and I'll give you the rest of my time. On this issue, just when you design it all, let's bring the specialist in there so it's designed right, okay? Because I know I'm not an expert on the field, okay? I'm not an expert in a lot of fields, but I know that we have experts to draw on, and that's how we get it done. I love what I'm hearing on this. Thank you.
All right, we'll start our 5-minute debate. Does anybody want to start? I'll start with Tim.
One of the things Neil pointed on is the fact that municipalities have gotten into doctor recruitment. And it's so difficult as a municipality, because right now we're seeing every single dollar that a municipality has is getting stretched. I know we have Councillor Terry Cassidy here from Quinte West, and there are so many hands out for these dollars. There's 4.3 million Canadians that don't have a family doctor. My wife and daughter just got back a family doctor a few weeks ago, and these things sound good. Everybody gets a doctor, everybody gets access to mental health, but it's how you implement the program. I mean, it's always easy to say we want to give everybody $1 million to start school. It's the implementation of the promises that we're talking about. This is an extremely difficult, complex system that we're talking about. One of the things that never gets talked about is general practitioners and doctors getting treated as small businesses. And as a small business, the taxes on doctors are through the roof. And one of the things we want to look at for physicians and small businesses is income splitting. And what that does is, if we're going to recruit doctors from big cities to come to smaller towns and to encourage their partner to come here as well, they need to have a job. And if they don't have a job, the income splitting, as they're treated as small businesses, allows them to be in a different tax bracket. Doctors already don't start work till they're 30, and they don't have pensions. Yes, they get paid well. Nobody's arguing that. But the doctor and the happiness of the doctor is absolutely vital to this whole situation and making sure that they want to come to an area. And I applaud municipalities for fighting for that, but we need to make sure that doctors are at the front and center of this whole discussion.
Stephanie, would you like to make a comment?
Yeah, so what I was trying to say there, I guess I've been thinking a lot about the patriarchal system and some of that, and it's a bit of a weird tangent. I don't know if it's actually all that helpful, other than I feel like our lack of emotional intelligence, our feeling that matters, has led to us having the system and society that we currently have. And so the more that we continue to not identify with what our minds are doing, how we think, the more we're going to continue to have the same systems. So in order to change the way we do what we do in society, we need to have mental and emotional understanding. And I think making it more accessible and affordable for people doesn't have to be that complicated. And also there is some kind of science and data out there that it is possible to have a counselor that's not necessarily like a professional on the same level as, say, a psychologist or a psychotherapist, but that you could just meet up with somebody that is what they call it, just like a counselor. And there was somebody in the public that just offers that service. Is a little bit cheaper, and they sometimes have the same amount of benefit as if you see a psychologist or a psychotherapist. So we can be very progressive and think outside the box and deliver these services in a cheaper manner that's more approachable to just the regular public. And I think we need to think in those terms. Okay? Yeah, anyways. That's
Would anyone else like to make a comment before we close the debate?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, we really have to search the world. We Google things all the time. We really have to search the world to see if there's new technology or any new treatment that we can adapt here. I just think of this this mayor in some area north of us somewhere. He had stage 4 cancer. I remember reading this 2 or 3 years ago. And then he went to Mexico, was it? He went to Germany to get treatment, and he's okay now. So there are technologies and other methods that work elsewhere. We have to adapt them to our society the best we can and as soon as we can.
Would Neil and Danny like to make a comment before we close?
And I think that, again, we seem to be all on the same page here, and it makes our community better. And I think that, if any of us are successful, that we'll lobby for this. I mean, it does affect our community, and it affects my family and affects your family.
Danny?
Completely agree.
All right. All right, we'll move on to our next question.
I'm fortunate to work in this wonderful college. And before I ask my question, I just want to say to the 5 of you, this is my 3rd all candidates debate. And I want to congratulate the 5 of you for the respectfulness and the quality of the debate that you've brought to all of those settings. And I think it's really helpful to voters. So thank you very much to all 5 of you for putting your names forward, being part of this whole process. My question is about post-secondary infrastructure, and you've mentioned, Tim, around skills, trades. Neil, you referenced the wonderful health science wing that we have upstairs for nursing. Many of the hopes and dreams in your platforms talk about having graduates to be able to enable new technology or to make things happen in the community. And so I would like to know specifically in each one of your platforms, how are you addressing the post-secondary infrastructure deficit that exists across the country so that our students have the appropriate equipment and facilities to train and learn in?
All right, we'll start back with Tim.
Thank you, Doctor. And what I would say right off the hop is that the Link Lounge, which is just at the end of this building, was something that the Conservative government invested heavily in. And the specifics of the brick and mortar of infrastructure, the issues that we're seeing with post-secondary institutions and the concerns there is the same issues that we're seeing with water and wastewater and roads and brick. Belleville alone has $1 billion worth of infrastructure. And when you have that many hands out, it makes it very difficult. This government had talked about investing into infrastructure, and we need to get that infrastructure from the government into people's hands. And we haven't seen that money coming recently. The fact of the matter is that these projects get brought up by a post-secondary institution or a municipality, and they have to get from there and they have to get back into your hands, because if we don't invest and we don't put the millions in that are needed, into billion-dollar projects or hundreds of millions of dollars projects. You have millions of dollars, is my assumption, in requirements for this facility. If you don't have that money, you can't grow, you can't prosper, we can't get more jobs here, we can't grow the economy here. So it's phase one. Infrastructure is vital.
All right, we'll move on to Paul.
Well, our party wants to cut regulations, and that'll help a lot. We also want to cut, it's all about money too, and we want to cut the corporate welfare. That'll bring more money to us. We want to get that offshore money that people owe us. It's money they owe us already. And we want to cut the foreign aid, except if it's for humanitarian reasons. And with that money, we can invest it, and we have to invest it in our education. Because without it, we can't have a decent economy. We can't have the students get the proper training they need. They need the tools. They need the financing. They need the new technology to get ahead. We need it as a country to be able to survive, and it'll just boost our economy. So we really can't lose investing in education. It's very important.
All right, we'll move on to Neil.
And again, thank you for the question. And it's again an honor to be here. And I think we've had about 13 debates, or we've had 10 already. So we're winding it down. I think we have 3 more left. So usually Loyalist is the last debate. It's unfortunate it's not the last debate. It'd be nice. The best one, definitely the best one. But as you're well aware, we've invested in the college over the past years. I was here, I think, 3 years ago to make an announcement on the nursing wing, and it's completed now. And I believe that was around the $2 million mark, give or take 100,000 in that range. We've invested in new technology. So you look at your cannabis lab you hear that we have invested in heavily. It is a new changing world, though, and we're going to invest in green tech jobs. So with phasing out coal and stuff like that, we're investing, I believe, in 100,000 retraining of workers. So again, something that we have to look for this college and that towards. There's lots of net zero. We're giving rebates, obviously, to corporations for net zero, that produce a net zero project. And you look at it, I believe Trent University has kind of jumped on a little bit of that. Hopefully Loyalist can too, and I know you have to apply each year to what you're going to do, and hopefully you've got some great ideas that we can sit down and talk about in the future. Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to Danny.
My understanding is if we have a shortage of health service and medical workers and providers, then we've got to invest in our schools to actually get people trained in those fields. I know there's a large rural need for starters, as well as in a lot of urban centers. So if we have that problem of a shortage of these people, then we should invest into getting those people trained. That just makes common sense. Obviously, again, intergovernment level cooperation is there, and that's what we need, and we do it. It's about funding, right? Thanks.
All right, Stephanie?
Yeah, I was looking to try to have something very specific for you, but I don't have that, and I don't like to tell people that I have something that is not true. So specifically what I just wanted to mention, I guess, is, again, this New Deal for people that we've been talking about, the Green New Deal, which is a holistic plan of re-educating people so that they can move into the green economy. So we would be making sure that there are programs, of course, in place so that people can get retrained and trained in those fields, so that we're moving away from the traditional economy and moving to a green economy where people are working and living in a way that is very efficient, and making sure that we're not continuing to have these level of emissions that we've been dealing with so far, because it's at this rate we're not going to have effective climate action. I know that's a bit of a roundabout answer, but I feel like this is our commitment, is to retraining and having folks that can work in those jobs, and we will be definitely investing in colleges being able to deliver those programs. Thank you.
President Vaughn, did you get the answer you were looking for?
Sort of. I'd just like to ask, if it's not on your platform, can we get a guarantee that you would advocate for it on behalf of colleges, and in particular Loyalist College?
You'll start, Tim.
Infrastructure funding is in our platform, and you bet it. For infrastructure, absolutely. And yes, we will do everything we can to make it happen.
Paul?
I don't actually. I don't see it in our policy, but our whole policy is about fairness and people of Canada. So I'm sure it's going to be one of ours. Well, I'll tell you, we're allowed to speak our own minds, and I would make sure we implement it. I come from a family of teachers. My sister was a teacher. My dad was a teacher. He was at the beginning of George Brown College at the first meetings from before it was a provincial institute of trade, and then it became a college. So I love education. My dad said I should have taken more courses, but I didn't. He passed away, the poor guy. Smart man.
And so, yes, it's in our platform. And I just wanted to make another comment. I think we also got into energy retrofits that was canceled by the province. And so that was in our last budget to come back and tuck in where the province canceled it. So for windows and HVACs and things like that. So that was in budget 2019 and will continue. Thank you.
Does the college want the funding?
Yes.
My job then is to go out and get it for you. Absolutely. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right here. So it says more accessible job training and lifelong learning for all. It also says a new fairer deal for all workers. And the Green New Deal, the New Deal for People, lays out in quite a lot of detail about how we're going to invest in those green jobs, making sure that people are working in fields that are a part of that economy. So for sure, I'm advocating for that. That's what I would be hoping for sure.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Brittany.
Yeah.
Thank you. So that's all the time for questions that we have. So we're going to go into our closing statements, and we're going to start with Stephanie Bell.
Crazy back here.
It's fine. We'll give you time.
It's fine. It's good. There was a lot of furiousness. All right. Again, I'm Stephanie Bell, and I'm your NDP candidate for this very fine riding of the Bay of Quinte. Again, I want to say I'm here because I believe that we should have representation that is diverse, that represents all of us, and that is, diverse in age, gender, socioeconomic background, so that they understand the situations that all of us are living on a daily basis. They should know what it feels like to be dealing with affordable housing and not being able to pay for rent or food. I think that understanding that daily struggle is something that I'm still living, and for me, that's why I'm here. I want to make sure that we have voices like that. So again, sometimes I'm not sure if I can afford food or rent. This last week, I was still struggling to pay my water bill, and so it's just something that I'm living on a daily basis. And I'm here because I believe that the NDP have always been advocates for workers' rights, affordability, and health care, which are things that we desperately need. They're not just people, they're not just a party, they're actually just people like you and me, and they care about other people. Me too, I care a lot, that's why I'm here. I'm talking about caring and wanting to have compassion for other people. And for me at this time, that number one priority is still gonna be climate change, climate action. So I just wanna say again how much we have to tie that in with social justice issues, because they cannot go separately, they have to go together, and I think we'll be great advocates for that. Thank you for having me.
Now we'll hear. Now we'll hear from Danny.
Yeah, thank you, Brittany. This has been a wonderful event. I really enjoyed this one. Number one thing we need to do is have cooperation. What we saw last night was atrocious. We're going to have to rely on ourselves locally, as I mentioned in my opening, to get it done, and then we can inspire others and be inspired by others. We have all the talent that we need here to get done what we need to do. I agree with Stephanie. We have to deal with this climate crisis. We've got to get on it. We've got to get through all the bureaucratic shuffle. We've got to work together. We've got to cooperate. We can't have bureaucratic excuses blocking us anymore. What I propose is a local action committee, completely nonpartisan, no political stripes, no political colors, with local representatives, experts, advocates that we have. We've got a lot of them. I've met them over the past couple of months. We've got them all here. We can all work together. We all have a voice. What I would like to see in these action committee meetings is that we have a banner that we take to them all. We move it around the riding, but we take it to them all. And it would have 5 lines in it. First line, cooperation, respect, focus. Second line, 60% by 2030, 0% by 2050, $500 a month. And the last one in bold, get it done. Thank you.
Now we'll go to Neil.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here tonight, and I'd like to thank everybody for coming and all the students that are running it here tonight. The sounds has been great, and we'll be able to watch this on TV later. But when I first became mayor of the city of Belleville, I realized that we suffered from poverty, and there wasn't many things I could do about it. When we became government, we set poverty targets of reducing poverty 20% by 2020, and we've reached that. As I said, we've lifted over 825,000 people out of poverty. Our next goal is to obtain 50% poverty reduction by 2025, and we're on targets for that by raising the OAS by 10% by year 75, and also by raising this CPP survivors benefit. It's about getting families out of poverty. It's about getting our seniors out of poverty. It's about helping our community. When I was mayor, as I said before, we started a family doctor program. It's exciting to see that in our platform. Everybody has a right to have a family doctor. It will help our community. We are the party that has a climate change plan. We're the federal government that has initiated that plan. We have already reduced 3/4 to our Paris targets. We have a $70 billion plan to electrify the grid, invest in transit, invest in the communities of green infrastructure. Times are changing. We need to change with it. I think that overall, I'm down to 10 seconds here. I'd like to thank you. On October 21st, vote for Neil Ellis, vote for real change. Thank you.
Now we'll go to Paul.
We have been mismanaged for years. Many of the same issues seem to follow each election, like the cost of living, affordable housing, the deficit, and our ballooning debt. We must look to the past for answers. The growth of Canada after World War II was propelled by immigration that worked. We had less taxes, less people to draw those taxes from, yet the frugal politicians of the day built highways, bridges, public schools, the community colleges were created and built. Subways were built and expanded. Nuclear plants and hospitals for all our needs were built. All this was done and very little manageable debt was created. Politicians used to be more creative. If money from the Treasury was not available, they would look to other sources. For example, build trade offices in other countries and promote our products on the world stage. Some analysts say immigration should presently be $400,000 a year. The PPC strongly disagrees. The number of unemployed in Ontario alone is 450,000. Our infrastructure is overburdened. Hospital wait times are too long. Getting a family doctor is difficult. Affordable housing is almost non-existent. We need some relief, and that's our reasoning to lower immigration. We plan to balance the budget in 2 years and pay down our debt. We were promised that the budget would be balanced in 2019. It was not. Instead, $80 billion was added to our debt, and I thought I had a minute and a half, but I only have a minute. Thank you very much.
All right. Now we'll move on to Tim.
Please don't time me until I do my button up.
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much for having us. And one of the things we've heard tonight is ideas and the sharing of ideas. You have to take ideas and then you have to implement them. They have to become a reality. A lot of the things that we've said tonight, they sound like great things and they would be great things. Our challenge as a government is to put those things into action. Promising things, but delivering them. That is the follow-up of everything a government needs to do for you. Right now, every person in this room owes $43,000 to the provincial and federal governments. We are getting further behind. The cost of living is not staying with the expenses that we have. So what do? We want to leave you with more money. What are our promises? We are going to make maternity benefits tax-free. We are going to scrap the carbon tax, and despite what my friend says, the carbon tax is not an environmental plan, it is a tax plan. We also are going to make seniors a disability credit, a music credit. We are also going to provide a tax credit for those taking part in sports. There is a universal tax credit for Canadians. I would rather you have a dollar than me have a dollar as government, because you're spending that dollar a lot better than I am. Thank you so much. The advanced polls start Friday. You can vote at 365 North Front tonight or at 260 Dundas East in Trenton. Thank you so much for your time, and we're happy to talk afterwards. Good night.
Thank you. Before we enter debate, I'd like to thank everyone who made tonight possible. Thank you to Paul Papadopoulos, Ben Forgy, and Claude Garapi, and the film and TV students for live streaming our event for students who can't be here today. Thank you to Craig Jackman and the radio students for broadcasting our debate through 91X. Thank you to Loyalist College for helping us with the debate and giving us a place to do this. Thank you to our candidates for taking time out of their schedule to come and be here tonight. And thank you so much for being involved with this initiative. Thank you to everyone who attended tonight. I'm Brittany Woodcock, and have a great night.